Okay, welcome to the first edition of the Brotherhood Remnant podcast. And I'm Tim Yarbrough, and I have with me Rob Carr. And if those names are not familiar to you, we're going to explain a little bit about who we are. Um, I started my work at the Southern Baptist Brotherhood Commission in 1989 and was an employee there until 1995. So I only served the national agency during my tenure. Of course, I was involved in Brotherhood over the years in one way or another. I was a role ambassador and things like that. But Rob Carr, is going to be the true historian on this podcast because he's been a role ambassador, I think, before birth and then after birth, and then on up through the ranks and was a state Brotherhood man, and then ended up, believe it or not, at I believe the North American Mission Board is where you actually
Yes,
entered Brotherhood work technically on the national stage. Correct,
right.
Rob?
That is correct. That is correct. Tim, it's good to see you, and thank you for this opportunity of joining you in this podcast. And like you, I'm looking forward to many of these so that we can share our personal experiences as well as looking at some of the history, talking about some of the issues that I still think are relevant today, and maybe even if I may be projecting a little bit, maybe we can even find some folks to join us down the road for some personal interviews. So all that combination, I hope, will be interesting to folks, and I hope everyone listening will be enjoying that very much. So my background is that like you, Tim, I was an RA way back there in 1960 when it was still called the Order of Royal Ambassadors. Everything was in black and white. Not really, but that's what people like to
Well,
think.
that's the way it is in the movies.
Yes, I know. So, but then coming up through the ranks, was an RA all through high school, was in Pioneers and Crusaders, and then in 1970 became an RA counselor. And then my pastor pulled me aside because he saw how much I liked doing that. He said, well, why don't you consider that in a full-time ministry, which I had no idea you could do that. So we prayed and talked about it. And then I went on to seminary. And then after several years of working in churches that had RAs and helping them along the way, my first position was with Kentucky Baptist as the Associate Brotherhood Director in 1982. And then I went to Illinois in 1989 to be the State Brotherhood Director, and then worked very closely with the Brotherhood Commission in all those years. And actually, thanks to a good friend of ours, which I'm sure we'll bring up a little bit later on, but Paul Harvey nominated me to be the national co-convener.
Yeah, I
We'll
remember
bring that
that.
up at another
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. And so I got to do that. And then in 1998, when the Brotherhood Commission folded into NAM, I went there and then ultimately became the National Royal Ambassador Director, although I did start off as the Men on Mission, Baptist Men on Mission strategist. So
Yeah.
between you and I, we've got a lot of experience with this
Yeah.
work.
Well, as people can tell by your words, I came very late to the Brotherhood Party. Okay. You said 1960, you were a role
Yes.
ambassador.
Yeah, and I was a
I was
sunbeam
born
before
in
that.
1960. So,
There you go. I was a whole 9 years old when you had to be 9. Prior to that, you had to be in sunbeams.
whoa.
And so,
Yeah.
I went through the whole 50s thing,
Yeah.
growing up and everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't kid. I mean, 1960 is still far back there a little bit, Tim.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I know. I know. We're not getting any younger.
no, we're
In
not.
fact, that's why we're doing this, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was going
We
to ask you that, Tim,
Mhm.
from your perspective, why would this podcast be important to anybody? And I'm sure you'll ask me the same question, but in your opinion and your thoughts, why do you think this is so important for us to do this?
Well, the landscape in Southern Baptist life related to men's work has changed so much over the
True.
last, 20, 30 years. And there are still brotherhood organizations in some churches,
Yes.
but we were there during some of the most eventful stages of the development of brotherhood work. And of course, you knew Frank Black, one of the
Yes.
pioneers of brotherhood work back in the day, long gone to his reward. But it's one of those things that you just hate to see to be shoved into the dustbin of history in Southern Baptist history, because brotherhood had a wonderful beginning
Yes,
and not so much of a glorious end, unfortunately. But, missions in Southern Baptist churches are kind of on hard times.
I
And
really, I agree with that.
yeah, and
Yes,
brotherhood work was meant to train men and boys up to be great churchmen, men of
yes,
God, to lead the church. And that's something we so desperately need today. But to answer your question, perhaps more succinctly, on my side of things, I just hate to see when if you Google Brotherhood Commission, you don't really find much out there
that's
about it
true. That's
because
true.
the Brotherhood's demise and later years came before there was like a I don't you won't find a Brotherhood Commission.com org website,
Yes,
no
that's right.
archives, anything
Right.
like that. And a lot of the material is here, there, and yonder, and a lot of it is in Rob Carr's basement in Georgia.
It's
And
it's
he can
true.
yeah, he can talk a little bit in a minute
Yeah.
about the efforts that he's undertook to kind of resurrect this material and kind of get it out there and preserve it for future
Yes.
generations. And this was important work, and we'll get into this in future podcasts, but
Yes.
I was privileged to be a part of not only Baptist men's work, Baptist young men's work, but the development of world changers came
Yes.
when I was at the Southern Baptist Brotherhood Commission. And I got succinctly involved in disaster relief. Hurricane Hugo I helped coordinate, do communications coordination for Hurricane Hugo, which at the time was the largest response of Baptist men ever. And so that's me. I mean, that's just why I want to preserve it. And I know I'm a latecomer, and a lot of people won't even know who I am. That's why we brought you on, Rob, because they know who you are.
Right. Well, you bring up some very, very important and valuable points, and I think a lot of people who went through, whether it was in the early '60s or in your case maybe in the '70s, that you saw all this mission education forming, is that we're not and number one is we're not getting any younger, and secondly, what I'm seeing, and I think to add to your point of view, is that these next generations that have not grown up with a layman's missionary movement or a Baptist Brotherhood or Royal Ambassadors are basically, in some respects, I think, have got a gap in their experiences, because we learn to pray for missions, we learn to give to missions, we learn to apply ourselves in mission projects. You mentioned world changers, disaster relief, and there really isn't that coordinated effort. Now, that doesn't mean churches aren't doing missions projects
Yeah.
and things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
most churches are doing it. But whatever happened to a coordinated effort where like with disaster relief, you could have multi-state responses, you could have
Exactly.
pulling together of many different groups. And so I think the value of this becomes, because I have a feeling eventually someone's going to come along and go, hey, what about men getting involved in some kind of missions work? And so I think
Yeah.
we're leaving a legacy there.
Yeah.
You're also mentioned about the material, and it's true. And for whatever reason, call it what it is. If you want to say, I'm a bit of a scrounger, I've saved all this stuff, feeling like maybe someday there could be some use for that. And so I've been trying to digitize a lot of this material and to make it work, so that it's not, as you said, a lot of the Brotherhood material is shelved somewhere, either in a church, association, state convention, or even the National Archives. And I'm not complaining or putting anybody down on that. It's just, it's shelved. It's
Hmm.
literally in
Yeah.
boxes, and nobody's having the time to take it out and
Yeah.
look at it.
It's not a priority. It's just
No,
not a
it's not.
priority.
It is. And so maybe we can help nudge that a little bit as we
Hmm.
talk to people and as we make these podcasts available. That's my hope and prayer,
Yeah.
and to do that, because I think the one uniting fact that I would say, and what drew me to missions in first place, is that it unites people. You might have an opinion about a certain aspect of a certain point of view, but when it comes to missions, we should all gather around that and make it work. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, but
Well,
anyway,
our plans for this podcast, for anyone who may be listening, watching, are to do a YouTube channel where we will record a podcast. That's what we're calling it, a podcast, although it will be visual on
yes, it
YouTube. It's
true.
actually a podcast. And we're also going to have a blog, but the blog has existed since 2006, but it
Okay.
hasn't been updated since 2008.
True. True.
So that goes to show you how, I told Rob in a phone conversation we had back in 2020 during the pandemic, I said, we have got to get on this and we've got to make time because either you're going to die or I'm
It,
going to die or we're both going to die.
and
And
we've
none of
had
this
some people die. I
material.
mean, and we've actually had people die that probably
Yeah.
would have helped contributed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think once we get this thing going, I really think that there'll be some folks come out of the woodwork and want to participate. And that being said, let me share my screen just real quickly if I can figure out how to do this.
Okay.
Um, and I've got a few resources here
And
that I
I've got
want
a
to
couple
share.
I'll share with you now. Mine are going to be held up. So, but you go first, Tim.
Okay, can you see my screen yet?
Uh, Not yet.
Okay, hold on. Let me look at this right here. Okay, I think I've got it going. Okay, I found a few things that we're going to be discussing. Can you see that?
Yes.
Whatever
Good
happened to the
question.
Brotherhood Commission?
I think that's a
Uh,
valid question.
yeah, Jack Childs, who you may tell the audience a little bit about who Jack Childs is, but Jack Childs wrote this for the University of Memphis back in 2009,
Yes.
and I was not aware of it till the Brotherhood. Oh gosh, was it the 30th or 20th anniversary of the demise of the Brotherhood that was held in Memphis
Yes.
a few years back? And tell people who Jack Childs
Yeah.
is, Rob.
Jack was he was one of the staff at the Brotherhood Commission, and that's where Tim got to meet him. And of course, I knew him there, and he'd been at the Brotherhood Commission probably in the early '60s. He started there,
Yeah,
and his primary responsibility was to coordinate the marketing of Brotherhood resources and materials. And so he was on an executive level there and got to be in the important decision makings because obviously there had to be resources that would go with the
yeah.
strategies.
I think
J-
he ended up being the chief financial officer or
yes,
something,
he
didn't he?
was. He was.
I don't know if
So
that was his title, but that was his function.
that was his function. Yeah.
Yeah,
So in 1997, he went to NAM when the Brotherhood Commission folded into NAM, and he was there about 6 months, and then they optioned some retirement benefits for him because he really hadn't moved to Atlanta. He still had his house in Memphis, but
yeah,
he stayed for a short term. He told me that this work that he did had been on his mind since the Brotherhood Commission was folded into
yeah.
NAM. It really, we talked about that in 1996, actually, and then
Hmm.
97 it all came to pass. So Jack thought about this, worked on it, and then he put this together, unbeknownst to a lot of us. He just decided to put some of his thoughts on paper
Yeah.
as to what happened. Like I'm looking at, for instance, chapter 12, knocked me off my feet. I think
Hmm.
that says everything, even to all of us on state. I don't know if you were still at the commission level in '96 or not.
No, I left in 95.
'95. Okay. Well, we were all just like, wow, when that happened.
Yeah.
And but this is an interesting read. And if and I think Jack would not mind us if we, as you have done, as you've got this here, and if you wanted to make this available for people to read. It's a perspective, but it's an
Yeah.
important perspective.
Yeah. I think it's something that we could post on the Brotherhood Remnant blog, and make it available.
Right.
But yeah, just look at the the topics of these chapters, and we could probably make a podcast on every one of these.
Every one of those.
But what we want to do, I think, fairly soon, once we kind of get this thing rolling, is have Jack discuss this paper with us.
I
Now,
think that would be great.
very few people probably listen to this podcast, if you weren't at the Brotherhood Commission, know this, but Jack Childs goes by another name as well. He was actually the Elvis of the Brotherhood. And
Well, he actually leads music. That what he's doing now is he's actually a music, and he's a good.
oh
He's,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
yeah, so
but I knew him as Elvis.
yes, he had a talent for of doing Elvis impersonation.
Yeah, he usually trotted out the Elvis
Yes,
uniform. Can you see? Can you see this changing, or is it the same screen?
It's your, I see your cursor moving around on the whatever happened to the Brotherhood Commission. So it's still there.
Okay.
Now, I want, while you're fixing that, let me say this real quickly to our audience, Tim. This blog is going to be important because we can't possibly put up everything that's being scanned and
That's
put in
right.
there. For instance, like this. This is going to be important, though, because this gives a lot of history. But
Yeah.
I'm doing everything from pins and patches to cups, jackets,
Yeah.
shirts,
Oh,
as
yeah.
well as so all of that can be found eventually on this blog. And by the way, is that a free access? Will people be able to get to that,
Oh,
Tim?
yeah. Here's a screen shot of it.
Okay.
So you have the
Yeah.
Brotherhood Remnant.
Yep.
And you, well, oh, I'm sorry. It was updated in 2007.
7. There you go.
Okay. So, okay. And we came up with the little tagline remnant. This is out of the dictionary.
Yes.
Something left over, a remainder, a piece of fabric remaining after the rest has been used or sold, a surviving trace or vestige of
Yep.
past glory. I love that.
Yes.
A small surviving group of people. And then I just added the Isaiah 1:9 verse. Unless the Lord of hosts had left us a very small remnant, we would have become like Sodom. We would have been made like Gomorrah.
In other words, cease to exist. Yes.
Absolutely cease to exist. Yeah, you can be our theological sage on these. But just real quickly,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop that, and I will show one more thing.
And then I've got a couple things I want to show you.
Yeah, before we run out of time
Right.
here. When we talk about there's resources out there, this is something I just did a quick search, okay,
Yes.
on archive.org, and this is one of many publications that are sitting out there already uploaded by somebody. And you may remember this publication, Rob. I don't know. Missionary Education for Baptist Men.
I think I do. I'll see if I've got it in my things, but
Yeah.
but
And
this is what we want to do for you all.
Uding?
Uding. Yeah, it's called
Yeah,
Uding.
George Uding. I don't remember that name. Do you?
It's goes back a few paces, and because he was the director of the program division, so he was back probably in the 70s or 60s at that time. Yeah.
And just one final thing to prove that I have some Brotherhood cred going on. I'm going to show something that I found, and look at there.
Look at that. Now, see, Tim is going to help me to know how to do this when I put this up for scanning, because I'll have some of these things available. And even if we only show you the title, the rest of it, we will tell you is in this blog, so you can go look it up. Yeah. Okay, now let me show you what I got.
Okay.
Okay, this is real quick, and I won't take too long, and I want to try to put it up here. Like, it's going to cover my face. Okay, do you see this lady? Okay, this lady.
Yeah.
Is there? Okay. Miss Georgia Hayes.
Yeah.
She was born in 1907, March the 29th, and she passed away the 20th of October of 2006. Wow. She was 99 years old, and you'll never guess who she was. Excuse me. I'm sorry. It's blocking out on me.
Yeah, you got to keep it in front of you.
Yeah. She was the secretary to the first Brotherhood secretary.
Wow.
Who was J.T. Henderson. And I happen to have, here's J.T. Henderson's picture.
Yeah,
can you see it okay?
we can't see it. It's okay. Yeah, there we go.
There it is.
We go.
Yeah, J.T. Now, what happened was she had all this material from J.T. Henderson. When she passed away, the lawyer sent it to NAM. I got it. And so, for instance, which again, Tim, your stuff is much better than mine, but we will correct this. But for instance, there is a pamphlet here called Origin, Purpose, and Method of the Baptist Brotherhood of the South from the 1930s.
Oh my gosh.
So we've got some things we can't wait to show you folks out there.
And that is just a tip of the iceberg.
That's just a tip. Exactly. So anyway, there's just, like I said, there's so much, and some of it is so rich. And we'll have some teasers down the road. I definitely want to get into what's called Mission Impact 2000. That's huge.
Yes. I just got the warning of our time limit. We have about 9 minutes left. So, talking about guests, we've already mentioned Jack Childs. You may want to mention some other guests. I have some ideas, but I'm going to let you talk about that in just a minute. But but the Brotherhood history, one of the first podcasts we do, I want to talk about Brotherhood history. And you will need to probably lead that podcast for us with some of your backgrounding that you have and some of the significant publications. And I do have some of those
Good.
in my library, in my storage unit somewhere here in Arkansas. And maybe some of the events. I mean, Brotherhood University and some of the things that we did that we felt like really were key in helping equip men and boys for missions.
Yes.
And I think we ought to talk about campcraft at some point.
Oh,
And I would love to bring, just real quickly, I'd love to bring some of the old players in that are still around.
and so there's a few out there, and there's some current people that we can talk to that hopefully will join us in this, because I think we are trying to just say to everybody, let's don't lose this. It was too important, and it continues to remain important. And I think it's coming back. Last thing, real quickly, there are several schools now that are showing interest in Brotherhood material that didn't seem to be out there in the early days, but now I think because I've been talking and others have been talking, you've been bringing it up, Tim. There is a renewed interest growing, and some of the churches are even bringing RAs back or doing a form of Brotherhood, men's ministry, whatever, that's coming into play, because they see without the layman, there isn't going to be any strength there. And again, we're not trying to cast aspersions anywhere else, but just say we need our layman focused and active. And
Yes.
that will make a difference, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So anyway, that's what I've got, and I'll be working with Tim on how to get some stuff on the screen to look as good as his stuff does, and so I don't have to put it up in front of my face.
Yeah, Rob, we're going to have guests on the podcast, and we won't necessarily mention all the names that we've thought about. We've mentioned Jack Childs, but we've already spoken to him.
Yes.
There are others that we would love to bring on. I know Rob has a whole list of folks, and you can look forward to some really interesting guests that we may have on future podcasts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think what we're looking at is we're talking about lay people who are involved from their perspective, state leadership, maybe associational leadership, and others that, just may come across our path, and we'll invite them, and then we'll invite them to come and join us with you all.
Yeah, we really didn't get into that. I mean, I know you mentioned it early in the podcast, but it was originally a layman's movement.
Yes. Yes,
And
it
it was
was.
infiltrated by ministers and pastors that over the course of its existence, like you, Rob. But I'm still a layman. I've refused to ever become a ordained minister. I'm a deacon because of that very reason. I'm proud to be a Brotherhood guy. And
Well,
that means
for
layman to me,
That's right. And it is important. And I grew up with my father as a layman, and then I had my mother's side of the family where I had two pastors and a missionary. So I had the whole bundle in my experience
Oh, yeah.
of that. So
Yeah,
it was
well,
good. It was
yeah.
good.
Hey, I don't look at you and think you're one of these ordained minister, pastor, sanctified
Uh,
by God guys. Okay.
well, thank you. Thank you. I did pastor for 4 years at a church, but that was after I
I know that was
completed all that.
after. Yeah,
That
that
was
was
after.
after you served.
And it's a good perspective as far as seeing what from a pastor's perspective. So,
Yeah.
I think I got it all, except I never was a director of missions. So I didn't do that,
Well,
but
maybe that's not so bad.
or maybe it's still coming down the pike. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know.
You're getting in that age range.
Tim, it's good to talk with you. Thank you
That's
for
just
this
a joke. That's
opportunity.
just a joke.
Oh, I get it. But thank you for letting us join together with everyone, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And we'd love to hear from you. And I'm sure Tim eventually will have some places where you can go and react to this, or if you have
Oh, yeah.
questions,
Yeah, we will.
we'll be
In
glad
fact,
to look at it.
we'll make sure that the Brotherhood Remnant is the blog portion is up and running. And if you want to go check that out, it's just brotherhoodremnant.blogspot.com.
Oh,
Brotherhood
perfect.
Remnant, one word, .blogspot.com. And it's been up there for what? A lot of years. And
Well,
I started it because when I was interacting with people like Rob and others at the North American Mission Board, where we both served, there was just a lot of information out there about Brotherhood was getting kind of tossed aside. And I tried to kind of engage people. There's an article up there about Frank Black. There's an article there about royal ambassadors. In fact, I
Yeah.
think it's the very last article that was posted. We did a few articles on where are they now,
Yes.
which we'll want to do in future podcasts. And we're going to keep this podcast probably between 30 and about 20 to 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
We don't want to make it too long. And we want to do that because we're just so sophisticated in our time management, right, Rob?
Oh, mercy. Absolutely.
But then also we're using the free version of Zoom, which only has 40 minutes.
That helps a whole lot.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Otherwise, Rob and I would sit here all night and bore everybody until
Oh,
everybody's
boy.
completely, totally gone, So, okay. Well,
All
that's
right.
it for this podcast. And we'll see you again soon on another edition of the Brotherhood Remnant.
Another minute. Thanks, guys.